KMJ's Sunday Conversation with your host, Alexandre Balakian. Sponsored by Gar Bennett. At Gar Bennett, we help growers feed the world.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into an all-new Sunday Conversation right here on KMJ. This is episode 7. I'm Alexandre Balakian. Sunday Conversation everywhere you are. So every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. right here on KMJ 105.9 FM and the Mothership 580 AM, anywhere you podcast, and also watching right there on YouTube at KMJ Sunday Conversation. So we have a jam-packed show ahead of us, including the emotional tribute to the iconic voice of Fresno, Al Smith. But we begin with the continued fear that is spread throughout our communities over ICE agents and mass deportations. This week alone, the Bishop of the Fresno Catholic Diocese telling our media partner ABC 30 that mass deportations are inhumane and a very real problem in our community, saying, quote, "I try to avoid politics in my preaching and in my teaching, but there are gospel values at play here, human lives at stake, and that's where I not only can say something, I have to say something." Also this week, Fresno Unified called out to take action against a substitute teacher at Roosevelt, who was recorded by students in the classroom, asking allegedly which students have lived in the U.S. more than 5 years or less than 5 years, and if they have an immigration card. Now, allegedly that sub is named Craig Cleveland, whose brother Steve Cleveland once was the head coach of the Fresno State men's basketball program. And I'm not sure this matters, but Craig Cleveland was actually my history teacher when I attended Roosevelt High School. So, ICE sweeps have become so polarized with misinformation and social media. What is being done to calm those fears in our communities, to make sure our hardworking, undocumented citizens who pay their taxes and who have done no wrong can feel safe going to work each and every day and have their kids feel safe in the classroom? So to answer that question, I want to bring in my guest this week, president of the Nisei Farmers League. MANUEL CUNHA is here, who's working side by side with Valley boxing champ Jose Ramirez and alongside over 24 mayors across the Central Valley. MANUEL, welcome to Sunday Conversation. Thanks so much for being here. How are you?
Fine. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate that.
Well, I want to dive into a lot of what we're talking about here. I want to give our listeners some background for you. For those, I know you're a legend here in the Central Valley, but for those who may have forgotten, what is the Nisei Farmers League? How many people does it represent, and your role?
The Nisei Farmers League is an agricultural organization that represents growers, packer processors, and farm workers that's been going on since 1970, and to deal with many issues to protect the farm workers from unionization activities that have gone astray or off, and it has advanced itself under the past president of Harry Kubo to today, which we are doing many issues revolving around agricultural farmers, from water issues to air quality issues to labor issues, marketing issues, trade issues. So the league has been heavily involved, and our membership, when we first started, we had 1,443 Niseis in 1971. To this day today, I have 13 Niseis left in the organization. Many of them have passed, and many of them have 20, 30, 40 acres and has been sold to larger farmers. But today we represent about 500 farmers throughout California, and many of us, well as packers and farm labor contractors, and working with for example, our county health department in Fresno, of distributing things to farm worker families, from everything from the avian flu to COVID and other stuff. So the league has been heavily involved in many more issues as it was in the 70s and 80s.
And how many farm workers do you feel like you represent when you talk about the umbrella, the stretch?
The umbrella, the stretch, if we look at our league alone, probably one grower, I have one contractor alone that employs 26,000 workers. Wow. He is in 33 counties. The largest contractor. And then when I start adding on the growers and others, so probably 60 to 70,000 workers that our league alone has touched, and with employers of all types. But across the whole state, we got about 440,000 farm workers that work in packing houses and in the fields and in the dairies.
Of those 440,000, can you give me a sense of how many do you think, is there a roundabout number, are undocumented?
Every employer hires workers with the documents that they present to them that on their face value are great. So all of our farm workers that are hired by farmers and packers, nurseries or poultry houses or whatever, are all legal. If you ask me if the documentation of the Congress has failed to provide to these people, it's probably 75 to 80%, in which the Congress has failed for 40 years to give these people something to go back and forth to work with. And but all of our workers as we know them, as what they present, are all legal. But if it's to go to the question, yeah, 75, 80% of the field workers have an issue.
That is a very large number.
Well, it's huge. It'll shut down, if the administration decides to come in and take me out as an industry, there won't be any food in the White House, and there won't be any food in the Senate and in the congressional houses in D.C. So maybe they'll just be eating pine nuts or maybe some barley or something, maybe.
Or McDonald's.
No, McDonald's won't be operating because they won't be able to get our food and the lettuce, the tomatoes, the pickles, the mustard.
That's interesting. Okay. And for those who never have thought of it about that way, it's a great description of probably what's at stake here, right? And Jose Ramirez, by the way, who is training down in Los Angeles for his next big fight in New York, he's a part of this. Tell me how you two have teamed up right now to offer this next month, I believe it is, right? Correct? Yes. You are getting together with a host of mayors around the Central Valley, Border Patrol agents, and correct me if I'm wrong, ICE agents as well, for education and awareness. Give us a sense of why you're working with Jose and so many elected leaders around the area to make sure that this is the way to go for education and awareness.
Well, Jose comes from a rural community. His parents worked in the fields. He worked in the fields for a short time. But many of his friends that he sees when he goes back to Avenel and stuff, of the situations in which they're in and the concern that those families have, and they've been part of that community. Jose wants to be a part of the movement of the issues to make sure that whatever he can say and do on social media and through his friends of connections in the sports world is to let them know what's happening and how important these people are in these communities and how vulnerable they are right now to what is happening. So Jose has just been a tremendous advocate for the farm worker, but also for the farmer. Mm-hmm. He has a tremendous support and a real feel for what's happened. And I'm just excited to have a young man like that from the sports world dealing with those issues that he don't have to worry about it. He shouldn't even, no, he really has a care about that.
And what are you guys exactly doing to get awareness out there? And, you know, I'm going to talk about some of the misinformation. We'll talk about how ICE agents, this isn't necessarily uncommon that they go in and do some sweeps. We're going to really dive into some things. But the meeting that you and Jose and elected leaders, you guys are getting together. Give me a sense of what that's going to look like, who's involved exactly, and will it be open to the public?
First, it won't be open to the public. Number two, the surrounding 64 mayors in the San Joaquin Valley, as well as Salinas, have contacted us to help put together this meeting to discuss what the cities do, how do they deal with a raid after they leave, and what does this community people need as their rights, as people, as humans, as people that are working in a restaurant or in the fields. So that part of it is going to be focused on that. These mayors are wanting to try to figure out how they can keep their cities alive and not allow their cities to suddenly become victimized by the bad people, because they can be easily victimized when you start what is happening with the scare tactics and other things that are happening in social media. That opens the door to where people aren't going to go to work because of the fear. So now some bad person comes in and offers them some money to do things. What does that do thing look like? And it's bad. But they have to survive. So our purpose of the meetings, the big meeting that's going to come up at the second probably week of March, is being headed up by the two mayors that are pulling it all together with myself and others, and Jose is mayor from Avenel and the mayor from Parlier. Both mayors are, the first meeting we had last week started it, and they had 17 mayors, and now many of the mayors that couldn't make it want to come, and they are absolutely wanting to be a part of how they can protect their cities in the sense of information and how they deal with raids. Not as much sanctuary cities, no, nothing of that type, but how to try to educate their people in their communities of what to do if in fact somebody comes to their door. What do they need to do?
Okay, but if it's not public, how is that information going to get to the public?
It's going to get, the mayors are going to deal with their each cities and go to their cities and put the information out through, if it's their billing systems, if it's county hall meetings and those things. That's what their attempt is to do. And I think that gives them a control over their community. The public comes to a meeting of this type, you never get any accomplishments, because then you have people that are anti-immigrants and all that, and you never accomplish what you want to do, and that is trying to have a solution to a situation that you don't want to escalate, and you want to make sure that the people in your community have the right information and are at least being able to communicate when there is a problem to their police chief or the sheriff, because after the raids that doesn't happen. So they want to ensure that that can happen. So if somebody knows something bad's going on, they can call their police chief, or how to do it without getting whatever caught and having a problem, but getting that person recognize who's the bad person to go after them. They want to build that trust back into their cities. And after these raids, it just throws it into a total disarray.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Manuel CUNHA is here, the president of the Nisei Farmers League, on Sunday Conversation. We'll talk more about, are these raids actually happening every single day? Are they happening in our fields, in our churches, in our schools? We'll talk a little bit about more of that coming up next here on Sunday Conversation. Welcome back to KMJ. This is Sunday Conversation. We are talking with our guest, the president of the Nisei Farmers League, Manuel CUNHA, and he is teaming up with the Valley boxing champ, Jose Ramirez, and other mayors and Border Patrol agents next month in a couple of weeks to have much like a private town hall with them, so that there's more information and so that there isn't misinformation about all the chaos and all the rhetoric and all the misinformation that is happening when it comes to ICE agents rounding up the illegals. Now, Manuel, I want to start with this. The misinformation. Is it mostly coming from the White House and the Trump administration? Or is the misinformation coming from advocacy groups, social media? Where is the disconnect here where that fear is seeping in?
The seepage on even January 6th, 7th of what happened in Bakersfield with the raids was social media. When we started getting calls that ICE had gone, or Border Patrol had gone into a field and arrested 20 workers, knowing dang well that in no way can happen, because they have to have a warrant. If they go to a farm field or a farm activity, they have to have a warrant for specific purpose and cause and names. So immediately we questioned the person that got it. We couldn't find where he had got it. Said that, well, somebody TikToked it to him. So somebody said, so being made up stories created a havoc immediately to the farm workers not driving to work the next day. and the next day and the next day, because people were taking pictures of Border Patrol that weren't even really in the San Joaquin Valley, from other eras of time, and technology-wise filtering it in. So again, the social media put a lot of this scare tactics and fear and everything else. Sometimes I really wonder when I'm hearing this stuff, is it deliberate?
Is there ICE agents in the fields? Have you actually seen ICE agents go to schools or churches to make these arrests?
We have not.
Okay, so that's all social media, bad rhetoric, bad information.
There's been no field arrest in the fields on January 6th or any time after, because they have to have a search warrant. That's in the 86 law.
And with that being said, how many that you know of, whether it's farm workers, their kids, how many have not gone to work? How many are staying home or maybe even leaving?
When the raids started, we had a loss of about 40% of the workforce immediately, especially in the citrus world, for 2 or 3 days. And then we got information out to the workers and everybody to make sure that their vehicles registrations were correct, and those type of items went out to workers in all levels, and to be cautious of who you are with when riding to work. If you go to the Walmarts or to the Vallartas or to the Home Depots, make sure you know who you're going with and where they're headed. So we put out an awareness and alertness of more for workers to be aware of. And that has helped a lot. More workers over the last probably 3 weeks have gone back to the norm. Mm-hmm. The workers are going different routes.
What about kids? Are kids going back to school?
Some are not.
Some are not.
Because of that.
Do you have a rough number? Fresno Unified, third largest school district in the state. I would imagine there is a large number of undocumented kids going to classrooms.
Probably kids that may not be legal, but they may have been born here too, but scared because of birthright discussions that have gone on. But I have everyone from one whole family not going to school at all because they're feared for their kids. So those kids are going with them to the field. They know they can be protected at the field better than the school. And that's no good. They should be in school.
Do you blame the Trump administration for maybe not making it as clear as possible?
I blame the administration. I blame the administration that currently is the Homeland Secretary, the border czar, if you may wish to call him that, Tom.
Tom Homan.
Yeah, Tom Homan. Is that they focused on criminals. That's what they were telling everybody. Everybody believes that. But then when you start hearing what even he stated about going to the schools and going to the churches, absolutely, why, Mr. President? That's not where your criminals are. That's not where your druggists and your rapists are. Why would you do that scare tactic to those people? Those kids are worried about, the parents worried about that maybe my kids are going to be hauled off without a mom or dad. And yet we got 300,000 children that came in here from 2020 to 24. We had 300,000 children that came into the United States. We put them in so many places, we don't even know where they are. Go work, go find those kids. Go take care of that problem. See where they are. See what's happened to those kids. Are they being abused or whatever? But why worry about the kids that are going to school right now? They're making a life. They're doing the things that we want kids to do, and that is to grow and become part of our system. And if the administration's goal is to use scare tactics and all of this and cause havoc for people to return back to their country, many of the people here, 20, 30, 40 years, this is their country, is the United States. It's not the country they were used to be in. This is where they made home. And to now shift them off to back to the original country where they don't have anybody, where they have other issues now they're going to be faced with, is wrong.
we just have a couple of minutes here, and just an incredible conversation. Manuel CUNHA joining us here on Sunday Conversation. Fresno County Supervisor Gary Bredefeld, he has said he's going to come in, he's going to shake things up, and he started to do that already. And he says on this last week that the diversity, equity, inclusion language that is part of Fresno County job postings, and you represent, the Nisei Farmers League represents a lot of people in the county, as you said. The language must be out, must be gone. And some of that language, includes diversity, equity, inclusion. And Gary Bredefeld says, get rid of it. It should be colorblind. Shouldn't be based on race or gender. He says it's illegal. It should be solely based on merit. Is this something that could also deter a lot of people to come to Fresno and work?
In the first place, it's a different type of workforce, number one. Number two, people should be hired on their skills, their merits, and qualified for the job and all of that. That's the way our growers look at it. Our growers look at, does this worker have driving skills? Fantastic, let's hire him or her. Or if they have packing house management skills, or they have skills in pruning or managing a harvesting equipment. Our industry looks at the skills of the person and doesn't look at the color or the gender or anything.
So you would say merit-based and DEI has not necessarily been something that's important.
Not in our industry, we're not out there pushing that agenda. Our agenda is the qualified farm worker, the farm family, the employee, and that's what my employers are looking for on all sides. They're not going out there with the agenda of having to have to hire so many of one race, so much of one race, so much of one gender. No, it's the qualified person that we have in our industry to work. And again, many people that are citizens of this country don't want to work in our fields anyway.
Yeah,
they have lost their work ethics, and many of the foreign countries have tremendous work ethics, especially the neighboring country of Mexico, and those have tremendous work ethics, and our employers tremendously support our farm families in our community.
Manuel CUNHA, President of the Nisei Farmers League, thank you so much for your candor. Thank you so much for the conversation. Appreciate it. Looking forward to see what you guys do together to calm those fears. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very, very much for having us.
We're going to take a quick break. KMJ Sunday Conversation. We're back with the panel, and let's just say we're going to bring the band back a little bit. We got a lot to talk about with our panel. That is coming up next. We're back in a flash. Welcome back to Sunday Conversation here on KMJ. This segment brought to you by my friends at the Press Box Sports Grill, where the game's on, the food's great, and the drinks are always flowing. Wish we had a few drinks here because the band is back together. Not in an in-sync kind of way, but hey, kind of feels that way. GV Wire News Director Bill McEwen is here. Who, Bill, by the way, you now own the record for most appearances on Sunday Conversation. Congratulations on the dubious record.
Okay, when do I get my trophy?
Oh, you don't want that trophy. And also, KMJ's own Philip TERESI, host of the critically acclaimed Afternoon Drive. You like the critically acclaimed part, right?
Hey, we are award winning.
Yeah, there you go. All right, lots to get to in the discussion. We heard from Manuel CUNHA, and we'll dive a little bit into that. But I want to start with this. Tributes pouring in all over social media. I believe Fresno's dear friend, son, father, mentor, businessman, golden pipes, he had it all. Al Smith, passing away. Very much the home of KMJ and the Fresno Chamber and so many other things. And, Bill, I'll start with you. Being a longtime journalist, Al Smith, the impact.
So what I would say about that is my politics were different than Al's. And for a time, KMJ and a bitter rivalry with the Fresno Bee. In fact, KMJ making the B its daily punching bag. And yet we still had this great relationship. And it was because I think we were both dedicated to the same thing, seeing Fresno blossom. And that's what Al and I shared together. And, you know, we talked from time to time. Obviously, our paths would cross. And, you know, the one thing that we had in our obituary on Al, I think was passed over by others, was he seriously considered running for mayor at one time. And I think he would have been a very formidable opponent because he would have been able to raise large amounts of money, and he was very media savvy and would be able to get his message across. So to me, just a first class guy. And I have to say, I saw him not long ago at Save Mart, and we stopped, you know, and talked there in the grocery aisle.
What was he buying?
I can't tell you.
Okay, I thought you were a good reporter. No, okay.
That was off the record.
Give me a sense. You know, you and I have had many discussions, Bill, about, you know, where the impact and the legacy and the legend and how people fit into Fresno and where they end up. And I'm talking about the lexicon of how we remember someone and their total impact on Fresno. Does he come in the top 5 when you think about a generation of what this one person meant to this entire city?
So to me, certainly in the top 10. And I would say it's a generation in which someone in his position as general manager of KMJ, and then later as at the Chamber of Commerce, those are powerful positions. You're going to have an impact. What's notable about Al is the grace that he exhibited and the fact that so much of his emphasis was on the positive.
All right, Philip, we'll come to you. Kind of a different perspective, I would imagine, for Al Smith when it comes to you. You and I, you know, we turn on the radio, we hear legends and legacies, and we're just drawn. I'm drawn to it. I was drawn to it. I would never change the channel.
It was really remarkable what he and Kathy did with that feature, because they managed to fit into a couple of minutes these really cool pieces of information, not just about Fresno, but about the entire valley. And even after Kathy had passed, Al continued with that, and he was able to draw from her work to continue to flesh out these stories. But I think that it spoke to that thing about Al, and it's the word that I haven't heard anybody use. Al had the spirit of a teacher. He was absolutely a businessman. He was absolutely a political creature. But at his core, Al was somebody who wanted to encourage other people to flourish, whether he was doing it in a private conversation or whether he was talking to the valley about its own wealth. He wanted you to know more. He wanted you to learn something when you walked into a room with him. And there was always substance to what Al had to say. I think Legends and Legacies, it captured it so perfectly. And again, that partnership with Kathy was unbelievable. I mean, how many books did they ultimately publish because of that?
If it can go into the Smithsonian, for me, I mean, that's the Smithsonian of Fresno, if you ask me. And I'll talk more about that later in my next segment. I want to get to now Gary Bredefeld, DEI, and how he wants the language to be removed from the county's job postings. And, you know, some of that language has, and GB Wire printed this out, that some of that language includes the department and their partners in a system, and I'm quoting here, a system of care by acknowledging the longstanding historic and ongoing inequities that Black, Indigenous, and people of color, those living in poverty, LGBTQ plus members, and other marginalized and underserved communities have experienced with a behavioral health system. So part of that language is what Gary wants to root out. Philip, I'll start with you. Should it be rooted out? Will he get his way here?
Well, to work backwards, yes, I think he'll get his way, but not necessarily because of his own efforts, but rather because of what's coming from the administration and how it's tied to federal funding. Do I think that language should be rooted out? Look, I don't need to hear the preamble every single time we talk about the law. I don't think that it is harmful to talk honestly about what has been done right and what has been done wrong in this country. And I don't think that it is in any way harmful to acknowledge as a civic body some of the things that we have gotten wrong in the past. It is a good reminder of how we can do better in the future. At the same time, there is so much money tied up in this, and there is so much public opinion pushing against, call it woke language, that I think that what Gary is angling for is kind of the inevitable tide of the moment, whether I agree with it or not.
Bill?
So let's take a look at this. First of all, the county was already reacting to the Trump administration's mandates on this. They were already going through and cleaning up the language for a lot of this. So Gary calls a news conference, and by the way, upstages another county news conference at the same time, or within an hour, one that actually is about something remarkable, adding 73 units for homeless people or people that can't afford a home in his district, by the way, and he didn't appear because he wanted to have this news conference, and he changed the time on it several times, trying to maximize his exposure, just as he always does. And now it turns out when you investigate it, well, they were actually doing this already. My feeling on it is I'm so tired of the woke language, and I'm also tired of how it becomes part of the political debate, and people that don't really have good intentions can use that as a political wedge. So what the county is doing is going back to and reminding folks that it's an equal opportunity employer. And I can live with that fact, because that's what it should be about, equal opportunity employer. But we know in the past when people said they were equal opportunity employers, they really weren't.
Right.
So it'll be up to the county to live up to that mandate.
I want to move on now because we've had some 2026 just seems like around the corner all of a sudden, where we're going to get another ballot in the mail very soon, right? And an interesting battle is already brewing out in Shannon Grove's district for state senate. That's District 12. Now, by a press release, Michael Maher, who ran for Congress twice and lost twice against Jim Costa, is now moving his efforts to that seat in which Shannon Grove will term out. On Thursday night, Nathan Magsig, Fresno County Supervisor, says, well, he's going to run as well on that same seat. Had a big, launching of his campaign over with Harris Construction. And so this is an interesting battle that's brewing. We're also hearing that Esmeralda Soria is going to run against her old council mate, Nelson Esparza, for Ana Caballero seat when she terms out as well in 2026. What should we make of the Republican versus the Republican and the Dem versus the Dem? Bill, I'll start with you.
Oh, you want to start with me?
Sure.
So first of all, in regards to the Maher-Magsig race, let's just look at the optics. Michael Maher announces his candidacy with the press release. Nathan Magsig has hinted that he would run, but hasn't announced it. And he's holding a huge fundraiser at Harris Construction. Richard Spencer, one of the most prominent Republicans in the Valley, maybe the largest political donor in the Valley. So he's going to have Richard Spencer's backing. He already has a huge campaign fund edge over Michael Maher. Michael Maher believes that because he grew up in Kern County, and there are a lot of votes for that district in Kern County, that's going to give him the advantage. The way I look at it, neither candidate is strong enough to clear the field, but I would think that Nathan Magsig's would win that if that's the way this ends up. And, you talked about it being 2026. Yeah. This is when people think out loud, and they really shouldn't be.
Yeah. Think before you talk, right? Sometimes.
Well, it seems like a good idea. I think that MAGSIG has the two most important factors already working for him. A track record that shows credibility and massive name recognition. Michael Maher has kind of the unfortunate luck of having a name that's very similar to another perennial candidate who has terrible credibility and bizarre collar tabs. Have you noticed the shirts? And Maher's a good guy, and I think that in the field without a Nathan MAGSIG in it, he would be a formidable candidate for an office like this. But Nathan is going to be the guy to beat in this race for sure.
Interesting. I want to move on. We just got a couple of more minutes here. Time flies when we're having fun. Fresno State men's basketball sets the record for most losses in a regular season. Maybe one of the quickest to ever do it. 22 losses. They rank at the bottom of the Division I universe, if you will, for men's basketball in almost every statistic. This is Vance Wahlberg's first year. He does get a vote of confidence from the university president, Saul Jimenez Sandoval. However, what I didn't see, unless it came out recently and I just didn't see it, but Garrett Classy, the new university athletics director, has not given a vote of confidence to Vance Wahlberg. It's an interesting concept here. Is this the part where the university says we cut ties, or do we, and we regret it, we made a mistake, or do they say, no, we're sticking with Vance Wahlberg. We believe he's going to turn this around in the NIL era, in the transfer portal era? Bill, you covered sports for so long.
So not only did they set the record for most losses, with more to come over the last couple of weeks of the season, but they've only won 5 games, which would be the fewest since Ed Gregory's last season. I think that was 49 years ago.
Only Bill would know that.
Well, and Boyd Grant came next, and he instantly turned around the program, and Fresno State's longest period of sustained success under Boyd Grant. I mean, the pickings have been very thin since then. Jerry Tarkanian was a winner, but not to the degree that the community expected. In regard to Vance Wahlberg, he should have never been hired. I mean, this was a pure power move by one prominent booster who promised to make huge donations in support of Vance Wahlberg. When you look at the record, there's nothing to suggest that Wahlberg would be successful at this level. I mean, his previous college coaching at the 4-year level lasted a year and a half with a program in disarray. The way this contract is written, and with Fresno State's financial pressures, I think he'll probably get next year.
Yeah, he'll get.
And they're not going to win, and then they'll be done, and they'll start all over again.
Philip, you got 30 seconds because your basketball knowledge is through the roof.
Yeah. Fresno State's got to make it look good optically and make it sound like we're giving this guy another chance we really believe. Unfortunately for Wahlberg, unless something dramatically changes in the program, including his coaching style, that's going to be it.
All right. There you have it. Philip TERESI, Bill McEwen, thank you. The band is back once again. We appreciate it. Sunday Conversation here on KMJ. We're going to end when we come back with a thank you letter to Al Smith. We'll be right back. Let's get social here. This week, the tributes pouring in for the iconic voice of Fresno, Al Smith. The former KMJ general manager of 15 years and longtime Fresno Chamber president, and the man who simply became the Central Valley's human time capsule, has left us at the age of 86. So many of you in the community were mentored or worked side by side with Al. For me, I was just a big fan, admiring a Hall of Fame broadcaster of 60 years from a distance. He was a giant of a man. And so I would like to share a thank you letter as a longtime listener. Dear Al, thank you for connecting me every day to this special place we all call home. Legends and legacies will forever be the glue and the fabric that helped shape our values and our way of living here in Fresno. Thank you for the stories that resurrected the past so we can conquer the future. Thank you for loyalty and unwavering dedication to us as a transplant from New Orleans. Thank you for being a leader, a thinker, and more importantly, an inspiration for generations to come. Thank you for showing us how to love the place where we come from and to never forget the rich traditions that will always be embedded in us. Thank you for logging our historic past with those golden radio pipes that still echo in my head every time I turn on KMJ. Thank you for helping to put Fresno on the map, for transcribing the magical journey of Kathy Rehart. Thank you for being the voice that echoed the warmth, intriguing, humorous, poignant, and vibrant stories of Valley inhabitants who created the legends and bestowed the legacies on those of us who now roam the same cherished ground. And as it was written, a community without knowledge of its history is like a man without knowledge of his soul. So, Mr. Al Smith, thank you. Thank you for being our heart and our soul. Rest in peace, my friend.